All right, perfect. Well, then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's class. I'm really excited to have all of you here, and I'm really excited for everything that we have to talk about today. One of the things that I am going to be talking to you guys about is photography for the salon and for the stylist, because I know there are a few of you that are stylists, and then there are some of you that are salon owners or even salon suite owners. So I really wanted to cover the basics for everybody so that you all can take something away from today's class. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Kristie. I am a stylist and I am a salon owner. I own Altered Main Salon in Cedar Lake, Indiana. And I am also a makeup artist. So I originally came into the industry as a makeup artist. I went to aesthetic school and then I went back to get my cosmetology license just because I loved everything.
And whoever's muted, can you guys please make sure to mute yourselves so you're not disrupting the class? If you can do so, that would be so great.
Thank you, Patricia.
Oh my gosh,
No worries at all. You're fine. So yeah, I am a stylist and a makeup artist and a salon owner. I have been in the industry for about 7.5 years, and I just really love everything about the industry. I think there's so much to offer in our industry. And I think that the way that our industry has evolved over the years is just truly amazing. And the things that we're able to learn and have access to, along with obviously this program that you guys are enrolled in, is really something truly amazing that you have this education at your fingertips. So that is just truly amazing. Seeing from where the industry was when I first started to where it is now is just mind-blowing, honestly. Going back to a few things that I specialize in is lived in color and then blonding. I also specialize in custom hand-tied extensions. And one of my biggest passions, I think, is guest experience and hospitality within the salon industry. I think that really is a huge piece of what makes up your business and your reputation. So that's something that I'm very passionate about when it comes to building my salon and also educating other salon professionals. And then I also love social media design. I feel like everything design related is very, very interesting to me. Another side note, I actually, before I went to cosmetology school and esthetician school, I actually went to Columbia College in Chicago to be an interior architect. I did not finish my degree, but I definitely learned a lot of things about interior design. And I truly, really, really loved it. So I do utilize a lot of what I learned with my social media marketing and design, and also, of course, interior design when I design my salon. But going into the topic of what we're going to be talking to today, photography, I honestly fell in love with photography when I first started capturing my work behind the chair. And this really stuck out to me that, you know, if I want to build my portfolio as a stylist, I really need to understand the importance of photography and how to properly capture what I'm trying to portray to my guests within my work that goes into my social media. So let's get into the actual curriculum that you guys are going to be learning today, and we'll just get started. So I want to go over the few different devices that you guys can utilize when it comes to capturing work. A lot of you, I'm assuming, probably use your smartphone as your camera. But I want to talk a little bit about DSLR cameras. So DSLR stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex. And these are the two devices that I kind of want to talk about today. I know that there's a few other types of digital cameras that you could be using, but I specifically want to kind of touch on the DSLR. And your smartphone camera goes a little bit along the same lines of the things that I'll be discussing. And we're going to go into the differences between the two and the pros and cons as well. So with the pros and cons of using your smartphone camera, the pros can be that it's very user-friendly. So it's very easy to use, easy to understand. You catch on very quickly. It's more of an inexpensive option because, you know, everybody does have a smartphone. So then with that comes your camera. It allows quick setup. So you just pull up your camera app in your phone, and then you just start clicking away and capturing your photos. The cons of this one, there is a little bit more of poor light sensitivity when it comes to capturing your photos. And you can have a little bit more limitations when it comes to adjusting your lighting with your phone. And then resizing, that actually compromises the quality of your photo. So like, let's say you take a photo on your smartphone camera and say there's something in the background and you want to crop it out and make the photo smaller. This can actually compromise the quality of your photo because it is in a sense blowing up that photo that you just captured on your iPhone camera or your Android camera, whatever you choose to use. And then it's in a sense stretching the photo to fit the size of your phone screen. Or if you put it in some other source of content as well. So then moving on to another con is that you can also have a lower quality lens because the size of your phone obviously is not as big as compared to a DSLR camera. So you are limited as far as the quality of lens that goes into your phone based on the size of your phone. Another thing as well, this can also drain your phone battery when you are constantly using your camera on your cell phone. I know we are all probably have experienced this going, you know, a full day of getting lots of content on your phone. And at the end of the day, your phone's on like 2%. And it's definitely not something that we enjoy having that. And in the long run, it can actually ruin the battery of your phone too. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Another con would be little to no control over depth of field. Now, I'm not going to touch too much on depth of field because we're going to go into that in a slide later on. But that basically is going to cover like the blurriness of your background or like how sharp your image is. But we'll go into that in a little bit. Moving on to the DSLR camera, we're going to go into the pros. So the pros of using a DSLR camera is that you can get a better image quality. Typically, because you are using a bigger lens, this allows for more details to go into these lenses and the image quality that they can put out in the images that they capture. You also have more control over exposure and focus, with that being automatic settings that the camera has, but it also does have manual settings. And I'm not going to touch on that too much right now because we're going to go into it later on. There also is interchangeable lenses with a lot of DSLR cameras. So when it said the single lens reflex, that means it's one lens, but you can actually take that out and you can replace it with another lens that has a little bit of a different depth of how far away you can see things or how close up you can capture pictures. And then with this too, you have a better battery life. So if you're using a DSLR camera, you're only using that for capturing photos. You're not also using that for like answering text messages or answering phone calls or checking your social media. So overall, you're going to get a better battery life using another device to capture your photos. The cons of this is that it's less portable. Obviously, it's another device that you're carrying around. It tends to be a little bit more bulky in some situations. I know that there's a lot of different sizes of DSLRs, but I'm just kind of comparing it to per se the device that I use. I personally use, when I take photos of my work, I use a Canon T6i. It's the Rebel T6i. And it is a little bit bulkier of a camera. So it does come with the fact that like I have to carry this big thing around. But personally, I look past it because I bring a backpack to work. So it doesn't really bother me specifically because I know that I'm getting really good quality images. So I don't mind if I have to carry something a little extra around with me. And then they do tend to be a little bit more on the pricey side. It really depends on the type of camera that you are purchasing. I know that there's quite a few different ranges of pricing that you can use or you can choose from when it comes to budget. But Typically, yes, the DSLR can be a little bit more on the expensive side, the more of an investment. But if you think of it in the long run, it is an investment into your business that will help you improve your business and grow even more. With that of purchasing another device, it also comes a learning curve. Like I was saying before with manual settings, there is a learning curve to it. And again, I'm going to go into that stuff with you guys as well, because it can be overwhelming when you look at something like, oh, this could really benefit my business and this could really help me, but I'm really not sure how to start this or how to use one of these. So I'm going to shy away from purchasing this because I don't know how to use it. And it shouldn't be that way with, making improvements to your business. There should always be, of course, there's going to be a learning curve, but it shouldn't be a scary thing that is so scary it turns you away from using it, because who knows the benefits that it could bring to your business. And then another con would be it takes more time to capture photos. With that being said, meaning adjusting your manual settings. If you choose to use manual settings, if you have automatic settings that you're using on your camera, which you have the option of both, it is a little bit quicker, but maybe not as quick as using your smartphone for your camera. But yes, it does take a little bit more time to capture photos with manual settings, but once you get your usual manual settings kind of defaulted, it's quicker as you learn and as you use it more. So let's get into the DSLR manual settings that I was telling you guys about in the previous couple slides. The main things that we are going to go over, which helps determine your manual settings in a DSLR camera, is ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. So to start, we're going to start with aperture. Basically what this is it's the opening in the actual lens of your camera. And to break it down for you, I did put in the bottom corner a range of apertures that you can utilize, and it also explains the depth of field. I know I mentioned that before, so we're going to go over that as well. So basically, when you have a wider aperture, that means that there's going to be more light that is going to be let into the camera, which in turn, that means that you're going to have a higher exposure for your photos. So this term aperture, when photographers use like what settings that they use, they typically refer to this as f-stop. So if the f-stop is a lower number, it's going to let more light into the camera to capture the photo. But if you have a higher f-stop or a higher number, it's going to let less light in. This also determines the depth of field I was mentioning before. The depth of field basically is your amount of sharpness to the image. So what is in focus in the image and everything else is blurred around it. So if you use a larger aperture, which is a smaller number or a smaller f-stop, you're going to have a smaller depth of field. So basically that means that your image up close is going to be very sharp, but then everything else around it is going to be blurry. So like you guys are wanting to figure out how to get that blurry background in your photos, this is how you would do that in manual settings. And a lot of the times people usually need to use a second app on their phone to create a blurry background, which that's great. You can definitely use that. But if you can save some time on your editing for your social media and utilize your camera to create that effect for you right off the bat, that'll definitely save you a lot of time. And this is definitely very helpful with that. So let's say, as an example, you're taking an after photo. So like the photo that I have right up here. If I were to use a larger aperture, the focus will only be on the subject and the surroundings. The background will be blurred. So I let you guys know that I used an aperture or an f-stop 4 on this photo that I took of my guest. So you can see that obviously her body is completely sharpened and defined, but everything around her, like the salon chairs, the ceiling in the back, the little pendant lights that I have, those are all blurred. So obviously the eye is not focusing on that. It's focusing on what is most sharp. And then we're going to go into shutter speed. So shutter speed measures the length of time that the camera sensor is exposed to light. So as long as your shutter is open, the sensor is going to capture the position of the objects within the frame. So any kind of movement during this period will appear blurred in the image. Now, I also put in a little cheat sheet at the bottom for you guys to have more of a visual to understand exactly what I mean by faster shutter speed and slower shutter speed. So if you use a slower shutter speed, you are going to use this more likely in low light conditions. So like if you have like a more moody setting or like a nighttime setting, I know this is not very common for salons, but if let's say you do weddings, or if you, for instance, are maybe working at nighttime, which is not ideal for us as hairstylists, but you got to do what you got to do to get your content. And you can utilize a slower shutter speed and to help kind of give you a little bit more exposure, because it is going to open that lens a little bit. And then you can use this for capturing smooth trails of subjects in motion. So if you look at the picture on the right, that is where we would use a low shutter or a slow shutter speed, because if you look, the subject is actually moving their hair to create movement. So by using that low shutter speed, the sensor in the camera is being exposed longer to light, so it's able to catch that movement. And then it's able to make it a little bit more of a crisper image by capturing that movement. Now, if you were to use a faster shutter speed, this is typically used for completely still objects. So like if you're taking a portrait of someone or an after photo where they're not making any movement, like this picture on the left, I just have her standing and looking down. She's not making any movements or anything like that. You would want to use a higher shutter speed for that nice crisp image. Now, I know I'm spitting a lot of information at you guys. Is anybody lost, or does anybody have any quick questions before I move into the third part of the manual settings? Are we good?
I have a question.
Sure.
I know that this is being recorded, so do we have access to come back and watch this later on? Do we know?
I think that's a question for Patricia.
Yeah, everything's going to be recorded and uploaded in the dashboard, and this will be uploaded to the stylist and the salon owner's recorded session, so everyone can access the information later on.
Beautiful, thanks.
All right, perfect.
I have a quick question, Kristie, about your camera. Do you use that for your video content as well, or strictly photos?
You know, so I actually don't use that for my video recording. My T6i, I don't think records video, but I have done a little bit of research, and I think the T8i does record video. The Canon Rebel T8i, that one does record video, but I just use my iPhone for recording my videos content.
Which iPhone do you have, Kristie?
Oh my gosh, what are we on? Are we on iPhone 14? Is that the highest one? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so I have the iPhone 14 Pro Max.
And you use the cinematic experience, or just like regular video?
I use regular video. Honestly, the cinematic is great sometimes, but it does tend to get a little bit blurry in some areas of my subject that I don't enjoy. So I personally will change the settings to be more of an HD, or I believe there's also 4K in the image quality that you can change on your phone. And I will typically just record in the regular video like that. And then if you go back into your camera roll, you can actually adjust like your exposure, warmth, and all of those things if you need to. I don't advise you guys like obviously edit your photos to where they don't actually look like what they look like in person. But if you see that there's something off to where like what it looks like in the natural eye, I definitely suggest if you need to go in and adjust your settings to make it look like what it looks like in person, by all means, go ahead and do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, of course. All right. And then, like I said, if we have time for questions at the end, you guys can definitely pick my brains a little bit more about that subject as well. All right. And then the last and the third part of your manual settings is ISO. So ISO is your control to, you control the camera's sensitivity to light. So if you're shooting in a darker area, you want to use a higher ISO, which will result in a brighter image. So you can see the image that we have off to the right here. It's the same picture that the person is capturing, but they have different ISOs that they have used. So if you see the ISO 100, it's very dark. And then going up to the ISO 800, it's a lot brighter, more exposure, a lot more highlights to it. So that is to give you a little bit of a visual representation of what that exactly means. And then shooting in an area where a lot of light comes in, like a sunny area, or like if you are taking a picture or an after picture in front of a window that you pull up your phone and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really, really light, or this is almost like blowing out the dimension. There's no dimension to this. You would want to drop your ISO to reduce the exposure. And then typically when you're setting up your settings, I would probably recommend getting your ISO to be as low as possible, because it's going to give you the highest quality of photos. When you make your ISO a lot higher, like if you go all the way to the top, it makes your photos look a little bit more noisy per se, which means grainy. Like, have you guys ever seen like that filter that basically looks like distorted? It kind of will start to look like that once you get the ISO a lot higher. So I typically recommend keeping it as low as you can and maybe messing around with your aperture to kind of give a little bit more brightness. Okay, so when it comes to doing your manual settings, how do you set this up on your manual? How do you set this up on your DSLR camera in the correct order? And this is very simple. It's just a 3-step process. So first, what you want to start with is setting your aperture. And then you're going to base this on your depth of field consideration. So going back to what I said about what do you want to be blurry? And then what do you want to be sharp? So set that first. And then you're going to go in and you're going to set your shutter speed for sharpness. And I want you to ask yourself, is my subject moving? And how fast do I need to make my shutter speed for my subject to stay sharp? And then the very last thing that you're going to do is then you're going to set your ISO. And again, you're going to start by setting this at the lowest setting. Generally, I think on cameras, it's like 100 for the lowest ISO. It might be a little different on some different cameras, but you get the gist of the lowest setting. And then you're going to point your camera at your subject once you've gotten your aperture and your shutter speed done. And then you're going to increase your ISO until you have your desired exposure. So in turn, this is going to be a centered exposure bar. So if you look at the picture that I have of a DSLR camera, you'll see that they have the little toolbar right here that's circled, and then there's a 0 in the middle where the little dash is. That means that they are centered within their exposure. And so it's balanced in a way. If your bar is showing underexposed, which means like your numbers will be more to the left, you'll want to keep increasing your exposure until centered, and then vice versa. If it is overexposed, which is to the right, then you'll want to lower your ISO until it's balanced in the middle at that 0. Okay, and then we're going to go into rule of thirds. So this is a guideline to help you break down an image and to help you create more balance within your images that you're capturing. So if you look at other people's photos or like professional photographer photos, if you place this grid over professional photos, you'll see where the rule of thirds comes into play. And there's 4 power points in the rule of thirds. So if you look at these little red circles that are in the center of the intersections between the grid lines, that is your position points of interest. So what I mean by that is like you can place someone's face, like a client's face in there. You can maybe fit the money piece, or you can put a hair care product right at that point. If you're taking like a flat lay photo for your salon, or a hair tool per se, or even if you're taking photos of your salon, you can put like a salon chair in one of those points of interest. And then I don't know if you guys knew this, but most DSLR cameras and also your smartphones offer a grid overlay for you guys to utilize when you're taking photos. You would just go into your settings, and I believe on the iPhone, you just go under camera, and then it should say in the settings for camera, it should say grid, and then you would just slide the bar over to activate it. And then once you pull your camera roll up to take a picture, the grid lines will be there for you. So then you can utilize that to also stabilize and make sure your photos are not crooked or anything like that. And then make sure that you're getting that rule of thirds in play when you are capturing your photos. So I have a few examples for you guys to see what I mean by rule of thirds. So if you look at this photo, This is just a photo that we did for our salon photo shoot. And the rule of thirds, placing the grid over this, you can see that my body is right in 2 points of interest. And then there is that negative space within the other 2 points of interest to create that balance between the image and to make it look more appealing to the eye. And then I have 2 more examples for you guys in the next slide. So I took a picture of a product, and you can see that the product is in 2 points of interest on the left side. And then there's another point of interest where there is an object as like a filler per se for the image. And then on the 4th point of interest, there is that negative space there. So there's a lot of balance going on within this image. And then looking at the image on the right side, you can see that this is a photo of one of my guests. So I did make her money piece more in the point of interest at the top left. And then I made more of her body kind of like focused on the left side of the image. So a lot of the interest is pointing to the left side, but then again, the way her body is positioned, it still kind of evens out to be more in the center. So there is more of a balance within the image. And if you look at the top right corner, there's that negative space there. And then at the bottom left corner, there's a little bit more negative space where like her shirt just kind of like flows into that side of the photo, but it's not filling that whole third per se of the image. Okay. So now we're going to get into taking photos of your guests. So when it comes to taking photos of your guests, we want to make sure that we're making it an experience for them. Obviously, when we are having our guests in our chair, from the moment that they walk in, sit in the chair, have their service, it's all an experience. So we want to make sure when it comes to taking the photos, we want to make this an experience as well. And the reason why do we take photos of our clients? And this is because we want to display our ideal client. And it's an opportunity to show your work to other potential clients, which in turn, most of the time when we take photos of our clients, it is going on an online portfolio, which is our social media. So if we can make this a whole experience for our guests, in the long run, it is going to benefit our guests. It's going to benefit our guest retention and also our clientele that we're trying to book. And it also will benefit our online presence. So when you are presenting the idea to your guests to take pictures, the guest perspective can come off as intimidating, depending on the person that you're asking. There could also the guest could feel like they have a lack of confidence in front of the camera. Maybe they're not used to being in front of a camera, or, maybe they don't feel like themselves, or they didn't feel prepared to come to their appointment to have their photo taken, or they just aren't really sure how to pose themselves in front of a camera because, again, maybe they don't have the experience or the comfortability being in front of a lens. So how can we make this enjoyable for them and make them feel comfortable? And if your guest is feeling a little bit more on the awkward side about this, one way that you can introduce the idea to them and make them feel more comfortable and make it an enjoyable experience for them is to get them excited. While you are taking photos of them, you can cheer them on and compliment them as you're taking photos of them. Some things that I always say when I have a guest that it's a first-time guest for me and they, don't really feel that comfortable in front of the camera, I am instantly complimenting them. I'm like, oh my gosh, this shot looks so good. I can't wait to show you it after I get a couple more. That is, and I'll say like, oh my gosh, your eyes look so pretty with the sun hitting them, or, little things just to compliment them and make them feel really good about themselves when they are in that vulnerable state, being in front of a lens that they can't see what they look like. And then, showing them a few photos that you've taken of them. So typically when I have a new guest that's not used to me taking photos of them, I'll take about maybe like 5 photos, and then I'll actually come up to them with the camera and I'll show them those 5 photos, and I'll I'll just show them and I'll say, look how amazing you look. Your hair looks awesome. And most of the time they're like, oh my gosh, like, wow, those look really good. And then you can kind of feel them start to like loosen up a little bit once they get more comfortable seeing what they look like in the lens. Or that might also spark something of like, okay, I'm going to turn my head a little bit more this way because I think that this is my good side. So it gets them a little bit more comfortable, and you're kind of in a sense like breaking that ice to ease them up a little bit for the rest of the time that you're taking the pictures, and you can get them a little bit more comfortable with putting them in different positions or different displays for getting those hair photos captured. So if you have a guest that is a little bit more self-conscious, because I feel like this is maybe the struggle that we might face with our guests, or it might not even be the case. We might just think that our guests don't feel comfortable with having their face in the photos, and we really won't know until we ask. So the way that I bring up this conversation of taking photos at the end of the reservation is I compliment their hair once I'm done taking their cape off, and I let them know how amazing they look. And I always ask them, like, are you going somewhere after this? Because you definitely need to go somewhere because you look way too good to just go home. And I ask them, are you okay with me taking a couple pictures? I promise we will just focus on your hair. And most of the time they're like, yeah, definitely. And you can tell if they're a little bit like nervous, but then you know how to handle the situation going in by how you're going to position them to make them feel more comfortable. So I attached a couple photos to give you guys some ideas of focusing on the hair and not the face. And when we focus on the hair, obviously that's what we're trying to portray and trying to display in our social media for potential clients. They want to see the work that you do. Of course, they want to see the clients that are in your chair because it's also relatable for them of like, oh, she kind of looks like me and that hair color looks really good. I think that would look good on me and I want that. So it's important to still show the type of guests that you have that you're creating these beautiful pieces of work for. But there's a way for you to strategically do it to where they feel comfortable and you're getting what you need out of the content. So these two photos that I've attached, you can still see the facial features of my guests, but you won't really see the full extent of their face, but you can still see it a little bit to where it looks a little bit more of an appealing or eye-catching photo, and has a little bit more balance instead of just the whole half side of someone's face, someone's hair. So you can move their hair over their face to cover majority of their face, but maybe have like one eye pop out. Like you can see on that one all the way to the right, the brunette, like you can just see her one eye that's popping out and then just her nose and her lips, but the other eye is completely covered by the hair because that's the focal point of the image. You can also have your guest lean forward. This is going to allow their hair to fall forward and fill the frame more. And you can manipulate the hair to cover their face in different areas to make the guest feel more comfortable, kind of almost like they have like a security blanket, and they don't just feel completely on display with their face right in the lens. Another thing that you can also do is how you position their body. One of my go-to poses that I like to do, and I don't know why I could not find a picture of this, so I apologize, and I hope that this makes the most sense of me trying to explain it, is having your guests obviously stand facing you directly head on. And then you can have them place whatever arm down that they feel comfortable with. And then the other arm, they are going to cross that over their midsection. And they're just going to hold on to their arm that is down. They're going to hold it right at that elbow. And then I kind of tell them just to kind of like relax their hips and like they can lean and like lean back on one foot and kind of rest their weight there. And then most of the time people will just kind of like slide their foot forward just to like more of a relaxed position. And then they have something to do with their hands. Cause I think a lot of the times when people don't feel comfortable behind a lens or in front of a lens, they don't really know what to do with their hands. So then they're kind of just like holding their hands right at their chest, or cause they want to feel secure. Or they just feel like they're holding them down their sides and then their shoulders drop and then their chest sinks in and then they don't have good posture in the photo. So that's one way that you can position their body to make them feel more comfortable and give them something to do with their hands. Or if you feel like they would feel more comfortable sitting down, you can actually put them at the edge of a chair. Like if you have a chair in your waiting area, or if you have a saddle stool that you use when you're doing hair, you can have them sit on that. And then you can actually have them lean forward and rest their elbows on their knees. And then they can just kind of lightly intertwine their fingers together in their hands and then lean forward. This also is making the hair fall forward. So then you can maneuver the hair to be in front of the face. And again, give them that comfortability to make them feel more at ease when you're taking photos of them. And then I wanted to touch on apps that you can utilize for editing your photos. These are just a few of the apps that I like to use for my content. And I use them all for different reasons. Some of them I use more than others. So I'm not saying like this is all of the apps that I use every single time I do my content creation. But I love using Canva. This is used for graphics, logos, ads, Instagram stories, Reels, TikToks. This app is honestly really great because it's very customizable. You can create your own brand kit to set certain fonts that you want to use. You can have a color palette that you can use so that when you're creating your social media, everything looks nice and consistent and aesthetically pleasing. And then that way it's a lot easier for you to just go in, utilize your brand kit every time. So you're not having to like sift through different fonts and all of that. So it definitely is a very, very useful tool when it comes to marketing. Another app that you guys can use is Facetune. This I typically only use for like minor complexion adjustments. So if like someone has a blemish, I'll just conceal it with that. Or if, you know, maybe someone's lips look a little bit dehydrated, I'll like add a little color to them, just a little bit. It's very minor things that I do. I'm not altering someone's face, like smoothing their texture or anything like that. Just very minor little things. And then another app that I use is Lightroom. This is like Photoshop Lightroom. And I use this usually to adjust lighting or photo quality. So if I do take a photo with my camera, and let's just say maybe my settings were off a little bit and it just wasn't, I kind of was just like in the moment and didn't really pay too much attention to it. I'll pull up Lightroom and I can go ahead and adjust that contrast or exposure or anything like that, sharpen the image within Lightroom. Another app that I actually have like recently discovered that I really love because it actually combines Facetune and Lightroom together in my opinion. It's called Lensa, and this you can make adjustments to complexion, you can blur the background, you can adjust lighting and color. And then what I really liked about this one is actually you can set your adjustments for settings to the foreground and the background. So by that, I mean, basically the foreground is like your subject. So per se, like the person that you're taking a picture of, you can adjust those settings on their own. And then you can actually set the background, like your blurred background on its own. So if you wanted to deepen that and then brighten up the subject, you can individually change those settings for both. And then another app that I like to use for video editing is InShot. And I like this because it is a little bit easier to create Reels and TikToks with voiceovers. And then you can also put audio overlay on them as well if you choose to. But I really have been liking InShot. They also, I believe, have transitions on there too that you can utilize. I know TikTok has transitions and Instagram Reels does. So InShot is basically the same thing. It's just a separate app. And I just feel like it's a little easier for me to personally edit my voiceover with it. And then the last app that I like to use sometimes is Teza. That is a app that you can utilize for aesthetic filters. They have a lot of really cool filters and they have different versions of each filter. So there's a lot of really big options on there for you to customize your aesthetic on your social media. So that is everything that I have for you guys as far as photo editing and all of that. I wanted to put my socials on here so that you guys can get connected with me in any way. If you ever have any questions outside of this class, you can definitely get in touch with me. I would love to connect with all of you. And I know that we were leaving some time open for questions. So if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them.
I have a quick question. So, getting down to like logistics, do you have your clients like sign a photo release prior, or do you just say, hey, let's grab some photos. These might be on my Instagram, website, whatever, just want to let you know, stuff like that.
Yes. So I actually do have in my my forms that I have on my online booking, I have all of our new guests fill out a form before they can book an appointment with us. It does at the bottom have a consent for photo and video, letting the guests know that we are taking photos and videos within the salon and that they consent to having this done in the salon, and that it could be the possibility that it is shared on, our website, our social media, or even for educational purposes. So I do have my guests sign off on that, and they do understand that that is happening in the salon.
That's smart. Is it like a separate section, or is it just a little thing that they like initial on the new guest form?
It's basically attached to the new guest form, but it's a separate segment of the form that they're filling out. And they do have a separate signature box that they are signing
Got
off
it.
on, just that portion. I apologize, I cannot see you right now. I'm trying to figure out how to get myself back in to see all of you guys. So I hope that I wasn't like stuttering on my words trying to answer your question.
No, you're good. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else have any questions on anything? I know you guys were talking about the camera settings on like the phone, and then if I use my iPhone to do video capturing as well. If anybody had any like piggybacking questions on that. What do you guys currently use for capturing your photos? Are you guys using iPhones? Is anybody using a DSLR?
Sorry, I have one more quick question about your camera.
Yeah.
So I know I've only ever used my phone, and I've definitely looked into upgrading, but it's just so overwhelming with all the options. Why did you choose that one?
The Canon T6i.
Yeah.
I chose that one just because I've always had Canon cameras. Even when I had like little digital cameras, that was always my choice. I think I tried Fujifilm before, and I liked it. I just felt like Canon had just that little extra bit of quality. And it's honestly, in my opinion, it's very easy to use. I know that a lot of DSLR cameras can have a lot of settings that come with them, and they can be a little bit overwhelming, but I noticed that Canon seemed, out of the other brands that I've looked into, it seemed that theirs was the most comprehensive to me personally.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah, I would say if like you're looking for a DSLR, to really just look up reviews. Like I looked up a lot of reviews on YouTube to see people's perspective, whether they were a photographer or not. I wanted to get the perspective of both, and that was my research that I did to help with finding what I wanted to invest in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't really think about that. I've looked at stuff online, or more like video reviews and stuff, but I haven't. They were all from obviously photographers, so I'll have to get both sides. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think Evelyn put in here she uses an iPhone 12 Pro Max and can't seem to get true color on pictures. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Like, what do you mean as far as get the true color? Do you mean like what it looks like in person compared to what the camera's capturing?
Absolutely. Like I feel like my reds don't look red. My blondes don't look a true blonde. I've tried messing with the ring light. I've tried messing with the like the brightness and stuff on the phone, so then it's like I have to try to edit it a little bit to try to get it to look how it actually looked in the salon. And I just feel like I'm kind of cheating when I do that.
Yes, I definitely think I think we'll all feel that way, just like if we're going in and capturing a photo and then we're modifying it to look like what it doesn't actually look like on the phone. But I think like you know what it looks like in person. You're just trying to make it look like what it looks like in person. So in a way, I don't feel like in a sense you're like cheating or you're misleading people when it comes to your work. When you play around with the settings on the lighting on the phone, is it after you take the picture or is it before?
It's during, like before, like the brightness, I'll start to like move it up or down just to try to get the true color.
Okay. The brightness, when you say brightness, because I know there's a few different ways to like use your iPhone camera. Are you saying like you click the screen and that little sun pops up and you're moving that
Yes.
up and down? Okay. So there's a different setting that you can use in there. If you look at the bottom, like the toolbar, if you like are in photo and then there's that like arrow at the top that brings like a different toolbar down, you can click on like the plus or minus sign and that's your exposure. And you can move the dial back and forth to adjust that. And then there's also different like filters on there. Like there's like the 3 pieces of paper. That's what it looks like to me. But you can swipe over to customize. So there's like rich contrast, there's vibrant, and you can adjust the tone and the warmth in those. So maybe, I don't know if you're using that or not, but maybe that
Oh,
might.
no, I never even knew that existed in there.
Yes. I didn't know any of this like either until I would say maybe like when I first opened my salon. I really was trying to figure out how I can teach my team because they all have iPhones. So I started playing around with it and I discovered that. So maybe that might help you as far as like with your reds and everything, that you might get a little bit more vibrancy from them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a quick question about lighting, kind of going like a different avenue here. I know in your front waiting area, you have like those big, beautiful windows, but do you ever utilize like artificial light, light ring, softbox, anything like that to help bring out the true color?
I have used, I mean, typically I don't use my ring light anymore. And I apologize, my dog is barking. She sees somebody outside, so I'm really sorry. So I don't usually use a ring light anymore because I work in the daytime. So I typically don't run into the issue of like nighttime lighting too much unless it's like 5 or 6 o'clock. But when I do use the ring light, that's usually what I've used in the past, but I set it so far away that it's not like right up on the client, because I feel like no matter how low you get the setting, it's still going to overexpose, and then you're going to be fighting that basically on your camera settings. So if anything, I would like set it really far back just to help kind of like fan the light out to give a little bit more brightness. And in a sense, I think the ring lights are a little bit of a cooler lighting, so that might help too, because if you have warmer lighting in your salon, it might help balance that out with neutralizing the lighting as well. But I've really only played around with the ring light. I haven't done a softbox or anything like that. But I will say, if you are if you're struggling with like overhead lighting, if like you have spotlights in your salon, if you, I mean, I've only done this maybe once or twice because I don't have like a actual overhead spotlight the way that we placed our lights. But if you take like some kind of like paper or like a poster and you place it like over.
Oh yeah, I definitely heard that.
Yeah, you can have that kind of hang above to kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but basically like cover that overhead lighting so it's not going to affect the root color and make it look warmer, because I know typically can lighting always looks warm. And then you won't have that weird like orangey red display on the top of the roots when you clearly didn't put a red or an orange on their root. And you're trying to figure out
I'll
how
have to try that. Thanks.
edit that. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any other questions? Did anybody have questions on like the manual settings, or like did you guys enjoy that?
I do have a quick question. So I have a Canon Rebel T7 brand new, but it's so overwhelming. To like, I turn it on and I don't even know what button to press, like, and then I just shut it off because it's too much. So what's the easiest way to start?
So when I don't know if the T7 is very similar to my T6i, but I'd assume you have a little dial on your camera, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's letters on there. So if you wanted to go into manual settings, you would turn it to the M.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yes.
know what none of that means.
So
Okay.
you would just basically turn it on the M, and then you have free range to go in and adjust the ISO, aperture, and all of that stuff to individualize your manual settings. And then, or in your shutter speed, I'm so sorry, I forgot that one. And then you can adjust it to what I was saying in that order, to get it to where you need it to, and then you just start shooting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else have any other questions?
Piggybacking off of like the little iPhone tips and stuff for the camera, do you have any other little like tips and tricks that we may not know about?
Yes. So do you guys ever run into the struggle with when taking a video on your phone and your lighting keeps changing because you're moving your phone around? Do you guys ever struggle with that?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. So instead of going into your video setting in your camera roll, go to photo, just as if you're taking a normal photo, and then focus on your subject. And then, you know, when you focus on the subject, that little yellow box will pop up, and then there's a sun next to it. You'll go ahead and slide the sun up and down to wherever you'd like to set your exposure to. And then if you were going to take a photo, you obviously would click that little circle on the bottom. So you'll click it, but you'll hold it, and then you'll swipe it over to the right, and it actually starts recording video for you. And then you can move your camera around however you want, and your exposure will not change. It'll be locked to what you originally set it to.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like a really life-changing setting for me. And that's why I was like, all right, I'll deal with recording on my iPhone for a little bit now. Because I'd like to eventually invest in the I believe it's the Rebel T8i that records video. I'd really like to upgrade to that one. But for now, my iPhone works just fine. So,
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you about like cameras. Like, what are your top recommendations if any of us are looking into getting like a DSLR or anything
Yeah.
like that?
I'm a really big Canon fan, to be honest. Any of the Canon cameras I feel like work really well. Their lenses are really awesome. I know that it's a little bit more of an investment, but to be honest, you could probably end up getting like a gently used one somewhere on like Facebook Marketplace, or even on like eBay. Mine actually was a gently used one. I didn't buy one brand new when I first got mine, but my lenses that I've bought throughout the years, those have been brand new. But I bought just the body of the camera gently used, because basically you can either buy a Canon camera that comes with the lens, or you could just buy the body itself and then you buy the lenses separately because they're all interchangeable. But that's kind of the gist with a lot of DSLRs. That's not just Canon. And then I know some people use Nikon. I'm not really familiar with Nikon, so I can't really say much on it, but I do see a lot of people use it. But my suggestion would be to really just do some research on like YouTube. I feel like there's so much valuable information on quality and settings and uses for different cameras from different perspectives of people that are using them. So I would say, if anything, do your research on YouTube and find some. But if I had to recommend a brand, my personal favorite would be Canon.
Sweet, thanks.
Yeah, of course. All right. This was fun. This was really fun talking about all this good stuff. I hope you guys learned a lot of good, valuable information. And I hope that I am able to help you guys grow a little bit when it comes to your social media and your content creation. And like I said, if anybody ever has any questions in the future, you can always reach out to me too. And thank you for, having me participate in this, Patricia. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for doing this today. All the information was so great.
Thank you.
So this will be posted in the group within, I would say, 24 to 48 hours if you'd like to rewatch. And thank you so much for being here, Kristie. And we will see all of you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.